Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy that lets you know it is another week with my man Jacob Padilla. Nebraska Preps Postgame will get you all caught up. And how about this? Does your business need easy competitive financing for heavy machinery, truck, or other equipment? Currency is here to help. Currency specializes in finding the best financing options for equipment, trucks, and other big-ticket items. Just fill out an application at Currency Finance. They'll do the rest. Currency is equipment financing made simple. Visit gocurrency.com for details. JP, now that we got that out of the way, how are things?
Pretty good. Pretty standard first week of the playoffs. A few upsets here or there. The top seeds looking like top seeds, and busy week for me in terms of my coverage. Kind of a rough week for the Huskers across various sports, but we press on.
Which describes your mood the best? Blue Jay basketball, Packers football, Suns in the NBA, Nebraska volleyball, or Nebraska football?
It's basketball season. Let's just, I think that.
Let it fly, baby.
Let's focus on that. Because, the football season's not going great for the team I cover or the team I cheer for.
Have you given up on the Packers?
Not entirely. And there's still, like, players on there that are fun to watch, but it's far more frustrating than enjoyable at this point. Just the way that they can't figure out. I mean, a lot of it's like personnel based, but it seems like they can't, even within the personnel that they have, figure out a way to get better. It's like, and honestly, they put up a better fight against Buffalo than I thought and had 7 points taken off the board by the officials for no reason. But yeah, it doesn't seem like things are going to get fixed this season, unfortunately.
All right. Well, things that have a chance to get fixed. Let's get started. We can get right to Class A. Couple of those tricky 11 6s, 12 5s, 13 4s that didn't really kind of match what I think you and I felt like were the seedings in terms of what we would call an upset. What'd you think?
Yeah. I think we had
we almost went 3 for 3.
Yeah.
In terms of Class A to start with Prep North Platte. I think we both liked Prep. Millard South Kearney, we liked Millard South, and we gave the slight nod, although we didn't love it, to North avenging the loss at Grand Island. But Grand Island had other thoughts.
Yeah, and so those games were close. Like we thought the 12-5, the 13-4. We thought both those were closer to toss-ups than
the true seeding lines.
Exactly. Prep, we weren't sure with the health of Sharmar Brown, kind of what they were figuring out at quarterback, but that was maybe as impressive a win from the first round.
Yeah, 27-0 to pitch the shutout. I thought that was the one that probably got the double take when I had to go back and then said, okay, let's see if we can get this added to the huddle pool so I can watch this.
Yeah, and just kind of looking around, like Class C1, almost entirely chalk, but every other class had at least one double-digit seed make it through to the next round. So it wasn't entirely chalk. We still got most of the favorites hanging around, but that I think it was a pretty good first week. I guess you want to dive in. Start with your game at the top of the Class A bracket?
Yeah, let me get to something real quick because it kind of goes along with West Side, as they'll see, Lincoln Southwest. But if I told you in the second round and you didn't know seed lines, and I said, hey, Jacob, we're going to have West Side, Millard South, Grand Island, Elkhorn South, Prep, Bellevue West, and Gretna, you'd probably be okay with that because those are top 10 caliber opponents, right?
Yeah.
See, that's kind of where, like, I know what the seed lines say, but then when I look at who's in the second round, I'm like, okay, this is pretty much the top 10, and Southwest could make the claim at 7-2. They had kind of won the round robin of the Lincoln schools. They're raising their hand like, hey, we belong.
So coming in, I think outside of Grand Island, basically all the teams that made it through were the kind of group that we identified as the top tier.
Correct.
North is the one team, and they were kind of at the bottom. We were wondering kind of where they belonged in there. They were,
especially emotionally.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Southwest, we talked as having the chance to be the best team in Lincoln.
Isn't that funny how at the beginning of the year
along the way
we said, okay, is this the year?
Yeah.
There's a lot of years that are supposed to look like that, but is this the year for Lincoln Southwest?
And they took care of business in impressive fashion with the rematch with Millard West. So, but yeah, again, almost all chalk, and I think probably Millard South and Prep would have been favored there. So almost all favorites there going in there. But yeah, West Side 59-21 win over Papillion La Vista. It's kind of doing what you guys do, it looks like.
Yeah, it was it's a pretty complete effort. It was it was comfortable at the half. We felt pretty good. Just starting to kind of click on all cylinders. We made a couple of defensive position switches. We're still kind of working our way through what we're going to do finally at the cornerback spot. But we like the safety play with Rezak and Kiefer, and Cotton is going to play back there somewhere, Keenan Cotton. But offensively, that offensive line I think is better than I think advertised, and Westside's finding a way to run the football, which makes Rezak, Cotton, and Lloyd, and now the emergence of Trevor Spady difficult to handle on the outside.
Yeah, and Anthony Rezak, actually, we talked about. He's kind of been quiet for a lot of these weeks, but Jamez Ross been quiet for a couple of these weeks, and you guys kind of got him going a little bit through the air.
Right.
A few passes there, had 77 yards on 3 catches, at a touchdown receiving. So that's a good sign. Like if you can get him going a little bit more to balance out that QB run game, and then you spread the ball around, 37 carries, almost 200 yards. 2, 4, 6 different guys logged to carry. So got a bunch of different guys a chance to get in there, play some playoff football, and get out of there relatively healthy.
Yeah, 2 guys that are kind of emerging late. Brody Gock has been really good for us in the run game. Ty Dingman has helped us hand the ball off a little bit as in the running back slot. And when you can complement that with Ross and get him out in the open field in terms of throwing him the football, really makes that offense kind of hard to handle. And what we've been able to figure out is defensively is much better against the run. North Platte was a little bit of kind of a soul-searching deal. We felt like we were a good run defense, especially after the good starts we got off to against Prep and kind of containing Sharmar Brown. We knew we were capable, but the option and speed option game had really dealt us fits. But now I think we figured out kind of what we want to do in some of those 3-by-1 sets and how teams want to spread us out. I feel like the blueprint was there for Millard South and North Platte, right? Where, okay, teams were getting us in the alley, and I'm sure we'll see some of that from Lincoln Southwest, but we do feel like at least we've got some sort of answers now.
And really, Papillion La Vista, most of their success came on 2 plays, basically. Yeah. Peyton Prestito had 109 yards on the ground, but 72 of those came on 1 carry. And was that a trick play or whatever they hit?
No, it was just toss. We got walled. They cracked back on our outside linebacker. We took a bad angle as a safety, and he was out of the back gate. It was right in front of their sidelines. I think we thought he was going to go out of bounds. He didn't. He's just too good of a back. I actually liked him. I think we alluded to that on film. I was calling him by number. I said I like 23 and 21, but there's a nice tandem that they have with Barrientos and Prestito, right? That's a good tandem.
And then they had a 79-yard passing touchdown.
It happened late. Yeah. It was like the last series or 2 that they had that they got vertical on us, and I think Papillion really likes Cameron Leggett at quarterback, who's shows some promise. So they played a lot of young guys against us, but I like where Papillion is headed.
But basically almost half their yardage on 2 plays.
Yeah.
So,
we felt really good about that defensively. Like, you know what, we're a pretty complete team right now.
Yeah, and another 230 passing, 96 rushing, 4 touchdowns for Anthony Rezak. So doing what he does. And on the other side of that bracket we talked about, Lincoln Southwest pulling out 31-14 win against Millard West. It was 7-0 Millard West early. Lincoln Southwest led 10-7 at halftime. And led 17-10 after 3, and just doubled them up in the fourth quarter, 14-7. So Millard West hit first, but from then on, it was basically Lincoln Southwest kind of controlling the game. Another Cal Newell, another monster game, 214 yards rushing.
He's definitely got our attention. We're talking about, we're just showing cut-ups after cut-ups of him breaking the first tackle. He's a big, strong back. The first guy never gets him. He's a handful, and I kind of wondered in the rematch because they played on the 13th, and Millard West mounted a comeback late. They lost track of Jackson Williams late. They gave up 14 unanswered in the fourth quarter, and Millard West won that game 27-13. But that was 27-23, I should say. But that was a game that I felt like the folks at Southwest felt like they controlled for 90% of that game. So you got the sense that they were pretty confident. And I'm telling you, quietly, Lincoln Southwest at 8-2, that's a good record. I mean, say what you want about the schedule, but they have found a way to really start to rack up some momentum.
Yeah, for sure. And good way to get momentum is 2 60-yard passing touchdowns. Colin Fritton only threw 5 passes on the day, completed 4 of them for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, they have 9 passing touchdowns, and 6 of them are 50 yards or more. Yeah. So when they get you, they chunk
Suck you in and then throw right over the top.
They chunk you.
Yeah, so like you said, that'll be 1 versus 8 there. So seedings hold in the top quadrant of the bracket. Then there was Millard South pulling, the seed upset, but like we said, Millard South is a completely different team with Camden Kozel than they were without him. And so their record in seeding didn't reflect their true ability. But that was a 35-21 win for Millard South, and it was close early. And then Millard South just dominated the second quarter, 21-0. Kearney made a bit of a run, but then Millard South shut them out in the fourth quarter to hold on for the win. Kozel, another efficient day, 190 yards passing, 2 touchdowns.
Turned out to be the Brock Murtaugh show.
Yeah, that's exactly. He was his favorite target. Murtaugh rushed for 30 yards, caught 6 passes for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns, had 5 tackles, an interception, converted 2 2-point conversions.
And he had a pick 6.
2 punts. So just a little bit of everything there for him. And without Simon McClannon, they were going for 2, and he converted a couple of those. So, it's unconventional way to get to 35. No extra points there, but they got there.
He is such a weapon, Murtaugh. Just, he's got good size. He runs well. Some make the case he's better defensively than he is offensively. So that he's a guy that can get you a couple different ways. The pick 6, he stepped in front of a pass beautifully and returned that. So he was scoring a bunch of different ways, and it sets up a very interesting matchups because 2 teams that formation-wise look a lot the same. 2x2, 3x1s with some bunch, good quarterback play. But Grand Island never an easy place to play, as Omaha North found out as they await Millard South.
Yeah, and we talk about Kozel, but defensively, really impressive performance. We knew Kearney hasn't really had a running game all season long. Finished in the negative, minus 11 yards on 19 attempts. And Traven Beckman completed only 54% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, but also 2 picks. So that's kind of. Again, it's really hard to win against a good team when you're so one-dimensional, and finally caught up to Kearney. But credit to Millard South for making everything difficult for them. And then, like you said, Grand Island on the other side. Again, it was Omaha North didn't turn the ball over 6 times this time. It looked like turnovers were about even. I think 2 both ways. So that was kind of a wash. And Grand Island struck first. It was a 1-point game at halftime. It was tied after 3, and then Grand Island won the fourth quarter, 14-7, to move on. Cohen Evans, he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Threw for 212 yards.
Such an understated player.
And
he's pretty good, especially for what they ask him to do. He does a good job.
And no Chrisman. Caleb Richardson led him in rushing, 18 carries for 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught a 27-yard pass. So, again, impressive win without the guy that basically won them the game the last time.
And that was kind of the X factor, right? We didn't know if Chrisman was going to play or he needed another week to get ready for the next round. And fortunately, I think for GI is they're a confident bunch now because they proved that they can do it with or without him when they had to. They'll probably get him back for Millard South, and I'm telling you, Jake, they can possess the ball. Whatever happens in that game wouldn't surprise me either way. I think that one's a true toss-up.
Yeah, and Tayshawn Porter went down swinging, 27 carries, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just phenomenal season for him. Led Class A in rushing yardage this season. I believe he was second in touchdowns behind only Cole Ballard, who we'll talk about later. Sebastian Serco, solid. Like he really struggled the last time they played, but 11 for 20 passing, 176 yards and a touchdown. Trey Brown head to Wayne State, 6 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown. Did the bulk of their passing damage, but in the end, Grand Island was able to make the plays in the fourth quarter to pull that thing out and move on.
So the interesting thing about Grand Island is they're 8-2. We've talked before. You know who their 2 losses are to. There's Omaha West Side and Elkhorn South. They beat Omaha North twice. They beat North Platte. They beat Norfolk. It's a team that they definitely have your attention because it's Coach Tomlin. What he does is get his teams ready for the postseason,
and that's really what it was. Because coming off of last year when they were so Kite and Fife, so dependent on him for everything that he did, so many different things for that team last year, and to lose a guy like that and to kind of reconfigure on the fly, plug in new guys, and have other guys step up and to not only not misspeak but get better. That speaks to coaching, that speaks to development and the program that they have out there.
So it's interesting as you take a look at the top half of that bracket with West Side and Southwest and Millard South, Grand Island. For you, I don't think there's any real surprises there.
No. Sorry, what you getting? Sorry, got a text from our buddy Sauter. That's the question.
The top half of the bracket.
I think that's. I thought North had a chance just based on the way that, again, it was close first time with 6 turnovers from the quarterback position. But credit to Grand Island. Again, they stepped up and made the plays. So, 1, 4, 8, and 12 in the top half of the bracket. And, again, we talked about Millard South wasn't a 12.
Go down to the bottom half and start with the 2. Now, this one was interesting. They kept saying the scores over our PA system, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, 2 teams that we said wanted to play in a similar fashion. We were wondering what Gretna would do with the run game, who was healthy, who isn't. But, boy, that Gretna Southeast game turned out to be a lot closer than I think the experts thought.
So I was out at Elkhorn, and so were our friends Connor Happer and Gary Sharp. And so as we're sitting there watching, because, we didn't need to lock in necessarily for second half, Happer had the Strive feed up on his phone, and we're all huddled around there watching the final drive for Southeast, have a chance to go down there and tie it or win the game. And the way that ended, credit to Gretna. But I had told you heading into the game that Zane Flores would not have a touchdown, what would you think?
I wouldn't think they'd win.
Yeah. And again, still at the running back position, still banged up there. They had to have other guys step up, and Riley Eggenberger stepped into that role. 13 carries for 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 10 tackles on defense, so pulling double duty there. But, yeah, Flores just kind of, by his standards, just kind of average performance there. 16 for 24 for 193 yards. And
the one passing touchdown was by Boganowski.
Yeah, exactly right. Caught 5 passes and then threw one for 29 yards to Blake Moore, I think it was. So yeah, Gretna, it's really impressive effort from Lincoln Southeast. Again, we know how about this? That Gretna defense, 14 tackles for losses, including 8 sacks.
So, and how about them running 74 offensive plays, which in high school is a ton. They had 23 first downs.
The fact that they were able to put up 24 points and hang in that game with that kind of pressure they were dealing, credit to Owen Baxter, credit to Max Butenbach in that backfield, because those yards must not have come very easily.
And so it just further kind of accentuates what we've said about Gretna. Tough-minded, tough physically, and their culture is something else, right? They just find multiple ways to win, and it hasn't been pretty a lot this year.
Well, and they haven't had a lot of experience in close games this season. They haven't had to. That Bellevue West is the one real example of all right, we're in serious trouble, and they found a way to pull that thing out somehow after Bellevue West made the furious comeback. They did it. It was 14-all after the first quarter, 24-21 at halftime. Tied it up, so 24-all going in the fourth quarter. Gretna got the go-ahead field goal, and then Southeast had a chance. They were marching in the final minutes down the field, and Baxter took a shot in the end zone, and Gretna picked him off and picked up the first down they need to run out the clock from there. So they were very much in danger of losing that game, or at least being pushed to overtime, and the defense stepped up and made a play. I couldn't quite see on the video who it was that pulled down that interception, but it was a heck of a play by them. Max Butenbach, 23 carries, 144 yards, 7 tackles, and a sack. He had a phenomenal season this year.
Yeah, how workmanlike is that? If the best chance you kind of have to win that game is to keep the ball away from Zane Flores, and that recipe almost worked, because on those non-Zane Flores runs, I think he finished 11 for 23, and some of those were scrambles. So I pulled those out, but Gretna able to run the ball for 5.7 a carry on non-quarterback runs. Just imagine going forward if Gretna can run the football and still have the throwing dangers with Zane Flores taking snaps. It's a complete football team.
Yeah, and Butenbach obviously headed off. Baseball is next for him, heading down to Lincoln. But 167 carries for 1,232 yards and 16 touchdowns on the ground. 17 catches for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. 5 kickoff returns for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then 67 tackles, 2 picks, and a sack on defense. Pretty spectacular. Had almost 2,800 yards in 30 career varsity games for Southeast. So, again, not bad for the kid's second sport. And he made a huge leap from his junior, senior year. So credit to that kid, again, who had that baseball scholarship locked up and just went to work over the summer and got better at football and came back. And Southeast, I think, got better around him as well, but he made the most of his opportunities this year. So credit to Southeast for giving us maybe the best game of the first round, I would say, especially relative to expectations coming into that one. Again, that's the 15 really pushing a 2 down to the wire, but Gretna took care of business, and that will set up a rematch of maybe the game of the year because Bellevue West took care of business 42-20.
How about identical scores in back-to-back
weeks? That's
the
thing is that's the tough thing about seeing rematches here, especially when when it's a close game. You're like, okay, let's see, like the North Grand Island game come back a few weeks later, have a chance to address some things and come up with counters. Back-to-back weeks in a three touchdown game. I don't think anybody really wants to see that.
21-13 at the half and 28-20 going into the fourth quarter.
Yes, credit to Papio South. Again, coming off of a 20-plus point loss, they hung around that. The final score is a little deceptive there, but in the end, Bellevue West 14-0 fourth quarter to put that thing away. They stepped up when they needed to. And Danny Kalin, 7 total touchdowns, 19 for 29 passing for 265 yards and 5 scores, and ran the ball 8 times for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's different for them.
Different, yeah.
So Clayton Goff fills in at running back. Our kids went to middle school together. A kid that I'm a big fan of. 38 carries in that one.
For 210 yards, and also caught 2 passes for 17 yards and one of those touchdowns.
Good to see him, because they're going to need balance, and at some point they've got to find a way to run the football. Gwenner just having a hard time staying healthy. Contreras not available. It's been tough sledding for the running back spot, and off of Highway 75 there,
and that was huge again because we talked about struggling with the being so one-dimensional early on. Contreras really settled in there as a major weapon for them, and then to lose him, credit to Goff for stepping up there and giving them basically what they got from Contreras there as both the receiving and rushing threat, and giving them the yardage they needed to stay balanced. Isaiah McMorris, top receiver again, 10 catches for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Caden Echternach had a touchdown. Davon Hall had 6 catches and a touchdown, so spreading the ball around to their weapons there. But McMorris's ridiculously productive season continues. And again, he made a decision to transfer to help his future, and it's paying off in a big way. So much.
Yeah, he'll be going to school for free, right? And that's
he was on the radar before, but there's only so much that 7-on-7 can do for you. Like, coaches got to see you produce in 11-on-11, and he's certainly produced this season.
And the next one. This was probably the shocker for me. Not that they won, but the shutout that they pitched is Prep hammered North Platte
27-0. That's a pretty impressive effort for a Prep team that we didn't know what to think about with the health situation,
wondered about
the quarterback
their health,
situation.
Haven't had Marcelino. They've overcome a lot.
And good to see Charmar Brown back out there. He didn't have a monster game, but he 170 yards rushing, ran the ball 25 times coming off the injury. So hopefully he got through it. Everything's good. Scored the 1 touchdown, but Ezra Vedral coming in there, 9 carries for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Tony Caniglio was solid at quarterback, completed 9 of his 13 passes for 105 yards. And he's the only one that threw a pass. So they kind of decide, all right, we're going with the sophomore now after kind of the trying to rotate all 3 different quarterbacks there. If they can get that from him, then that's really, I think, all you need with a healthy Marty Brown is just complete passes, stay on schedule. You don't need to go give them a ton of yardage. Just take what's there and keep the defense on their toes enough for that running game to gash them.
And they get a team kind of laying in the weeds that they're not by the way, but we've heard a lot about Gretna. We heard a lot about Westside. We hear a lot about Noonan and Ballard. We don't hear a lot about Elkhorn South. This Elkhorn South team has kind of been tapping folks on the shoulder all season saying, schedule or not, we're pretty good. And they'll get another chance to show their physicality as they take on Prep.
Yeah, and that was a 48-20 win for Elkhorn South. And East, they 12 by my count, 12 carries for negative 40 yards. There just was nowhere to run for them. There wasn't a lot of room in the backfield to stand in there and make passes either. Credit to Owen Lasig, I think, getting his first start. Jeter Worthley injured, shut it down. Dash Bowman completed a 34-yard halfback pass to Malachi Coleman. Great catch by Malachi, but he just got destroyed on the pass. Just a massive hit. Drove him into the ground. He was down for a while. So he got knocked out. He got back up and walked off under his own power for the most part, but didn't play. Carter Templemeyer, who we talked about in basketball, obviously it's my guy. He got a couple catches early, got a big tackle, pass breakup, and then went down hard in the end zone, breaking up a pass, and injured his shoulder and was out for the game as well. So they came in missing guys and lost more guys during the game, and they did what they could. Lasig, I thought, threw for 233 yards and 3 touchdowns. Camden Robke, top target there, went over 100 yards receiving. Although the 1 touchdown was a combination of, time and score and officials being out of place. He stepped out at the 5, dove for the pylon, and then I think ended up even fumbling the ball at the end of the play. But the referees were trailing it by so much that they just gave it the touchdown. So no harm, no foul. Again, Elkhorn South was firmly in control even at that point. But yeah, Carson Ronner, East knew they were in trouble. Second play of the game, first play, Ballard picked up 8 yards on a run. Second play, Carson Ronner kept it and basically went untouched, 64 yards for the touchdown. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
That set the tone. And then Ballard, 17 carries for 236 yards and 5 touchdowns. So again, it's 38 touchdowns in 10 games now this season.
We can do that math, right? 3.8 per.
Yeah, it's
pretty good.
There are a lot of teams that maybe aren't scoring 3.8 touchdowns per game as a team, let alone one single player. So yeah, Elkhorn South looking very much like the contender that they've developed into over the second half of the season. So yeah, that sets up a Elkhorn South prep battle, the 3 versus 11 there, and then Gretna against Bellevue West at 2 and 7.
Any upsets that you see? Because I could potentially see a couple.
Well, who's the favorite in Grand Island and Millard South? Obviously, GI gets the home field advantage there.
I think you probably make Millard South a slight fave, but by seedings, I mean that one's tough. I actually think that one's more of a toss up than Bellevue West and Gretna, and I think that one's a toss up.
Yeah. So that was
because I just have to factor in travel, right? And listen, it's an hour 40. It's not like East Coast, West Coast time different. Yeah. But when you're not used to doing it and you get a chance to see what it's like to play them there with all that purple, that hits a little different, especially getting off the bus after, an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah. But I think we'll see kind of what Prep's able to do against Elkhorn South. I still think, especially again with Marcelino,
I just don't think they can score enough.
No. That's, man, Elkhorn South's ability to both grind it out and then hit you with the big play.
So here's the thing. I'm looking at this game and I think to myself 2 things. Number one, Elkhorn South is a team in which I think you can game plan if you have the body types, right? I think their run game, you know what you're going to get. It's not really fancy. Even the schemes, I think Prep can hang in there. It's will they get hit with a shot play, either over the top or maybe give up a broken tackle run. Like that's the thing I just don't think that they can overcome.
And that there's not going to be much running room either with that defensive front. Those guys are just
got to spread them out.
And that's this East game was basically highlight tape for all 4 of those guys up front. First, it was Maverick Noonan. Then it was Noah Buster. Then it was Henry Prohaska. Then it was Ashton Murphy. All those guys made multiple splash plays in that game. And that's how you end up with negative 40 rushing yards between a couple of sacks, several runs for losses. You can see like they tried a couple of snaps of Malachi Coleman at Wildcat quarterback. First one, he took it and tried to run around the end, and he just kept running and running and running. There was nowhere for him to go. Ended up 4-yard loss, I think it was. So just could not get to the edge, couldn't even get upfield. There was just nowhere to go. They just had the wall built the entire way there.
Who would you give the psychological advantage to? Is it Bellevue West because they had such a dominant lead and look like they were in cruise and they think they're capable, or is it Gretna knowing that Bellevue West has had a hard time playing with leads this year?
Yeah, I think Gretna, coming off of the way that game went in particular, to both get pushed to the wire and then come out with the win, to know like, hey, one, there won't be any problem about getting up for this game, obviously. But just having that experience coming off that, I think, again, coupled with that win, like, hey, there's no way we should have won that game last week, but we did. We just keep finding ways to win.
Bellevue West has been ahead in every game they've lost this year. I mean, and in 2 of those games, they were up by double digits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to kind of take a look at that.
So I had to watch the first round on the stream, planning to be there for that one in person this time. But that's 30 minutes on Class A. We got to touch on some of the other classes here. So
Was it been 30 minutes already?
Yeah. But that's we had nowhere else to be, right?
Yeah.
We got time.
Don't tell that to our producer.
So Class B, looking at it, we had, 8/9. That's not even really, you can't even consider that an upset, but one true upset there was Grand Island Northwest against Elkhorn. And that's the game that I was at as well. And that was
Talked to Tony
really
Chapman and those guys about that game, boy. Pretty impressive performance from GI Northwest. And we talked about, okay, we knew the record, but all those one score loss games, would that matter?
Yeah, they were friskier than the record showed, and they put that experience to the test here. So it was a wild game. It was the 50-minute first half. It was scoreless, just churning up yardage, punting the ball back. Nobody could get anything going. Come out of the locker room, touchdowns on the first 4 drives of the second half. And so it was 14-14 with 7 minutes to go after the fourth touchdown there. And then Elkhorn forced a punt, broke the stream, and then they faced a 4th and 1 at their own 24, went for it with about 3 minutes to go, and GI Northwest stuffed them. And credit to GI Northwest, the defensive effort. They did it after losing Victor Isley early in the game, and they could not block him early
wreaking
on.
havoc.
So that was a huge loss for the Vikings. They found a way to get it done there, and that they stuffed him there and turned that into a touchdown. Austin Payne just doing some really impressive things there, and so they took the lead there, and so they scored the touchdown with a minute 34 to play. I'm making it 21-14, and obviously we've talked about Elkhorn with their style offense. They do not like to be in the 2-minute drill. That's not what they're
not built to play catch up.
First 2 passes incomplete, never had a chance. Third down, they pick up 7 yards on a quick out. So they're facing a 4th and 3, and they hand it off to K. Deshank, and that, 35 yards, weaving up through the middle of the defense, giving them life there. And they kept the drive alive and ended up, they got a holding penalty on 1st and goal from the 10, knocking them back to the 24. And then Connor Hunt dropped back and threw a dime up to Cole Hauk right in front of me, cornered the end zone there, dropped it or caught it, fell down before going out, hit down, touchdown. And they scored too fast, so they tied it up with 55 seconds left to go, and gave it back to GI Northwest. And again, Austin Payne single-handedly orchestrated the drive to get him in a field goal range.
At what point did you think that kick was going in?
I pretty much after they got to that point, it's like,
really?
It just felt like the momentum was all going their way, and just the way that the game had gone there back and forth, like, it's probably happening here. And it was credit to him, 41 high school.
That's not a gimme. It's not a gimme. That's why I was a little surprised that you felt. Yeah. But you had a good vibe actually being there, so you can kind of get a sense of momentum.
Yeah, and he again credit to Payne, who basically half that yardage through the pass, half that drive on the run with his own legs. He accounted for all the yardage there basically, and got them did what they needed to, kick the field goal with 6 seconds left. It was still left time for Elkhorn, and actually first touchback, I believe, first play. Schenk running up the sideline. He's got a chance to break that thing, it looks like. And he gets dragged down, horse collar tackle, or he might have been gone. So at that point, it's a tough penalty, but you'll take that over letting him go. And so they got the untimed down near midfield, tried to throw a screen pass, dropped it, game over. Just tough way for that game to end, but that was a phenomenal game. Payne just did it all, 16 for 24 for 193 yards and a touchdown. 14 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown. And Tegan Lemkow probably had an 83-yard touchdown on the best throw of the day from Payne. Just laid it right over the top. Lemkow made a great catch and run after the ball, beat the defense to the end zone. So he finished with 126 yards receiving on 8 catches. He had a couple of those key catches on that final drive there to move them down the field. And Shank for Elkhorn, 37 carries, 185 yards. Caught a pass for 3 yards and had a sick one-handed interception early in the game because GI Northwest was driving to start the game, got inside the 30, and then he just reached out, and I don't know how he caught that thing, but pulled it down again right in front of me. So credit to GI Northwest. Got the win to improve to 500 and send Elkhorn home. So that's a 13 seed moving on. But that was really the only again surprise in Class A. It was pretty much chalk everywhere else except for Elkhorn North. That was probably the most impressive one, 35-14 over Pius in the 9-8 matchup. And Josh Basilovic, again, we've talked about him before, 104 yards in passing and 3 touchdowns, 20 carries for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns.
As much as I'm excited about the balance between GI Northwest and Waverly, that's a really live 13 in GI Northwest. Boy, I all eyes on Scottsbluff and Scott with the way that matchup is played. And Scott gets another chance to see if they can hang in there in the trenches after getting kind of mauled a little bit by Omaha Gross. They're going to see another big, strong offensive line in Scottsbluff.
Yeah, just kind of workmanlike effort. Scottsbluff, 54-14. Boyle, 135 yards on the ground, threw for 153 yards and 2 scores. And Scott, 21-7 over Blair. They really got after.
They did a good job with them defensively. Yeah. That was an impressive defensive performance.
Yeah, between sacks, tackles for losses, Suckup ended up negative 56 rushing yards. So impressive showing by that Scott defensive front for sure. And it was 7-all after 1, and then Scott just kind of controlled the rest of the game.
I couldn't read that. What was that?
No, just technical difficulties. That's fine.
All right. Well, I guess we got to. So, are we going to cue the music? Do we have to put a bow on this thing? So, a real quick recap and be Bennington, because it's Elkhorn North, Waverly, GI Northwest, Scottsbluff, Scott, York, and Gross. I said this when it started. Scottsbluff has my attention. They still have my attention. I just kind of, I'm curious just to see what happens if they can be that team, because they're built like some of these heavy hitters with good ground game and big, strong interior offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah. So that's what we got in Class B. There's the one in Bennington who took care of business, 50-7 against Beatrice. Again, the Trey Bird, Nick Colvert, and Isaac Connor show. The 5 is Waverly, doing what they normally do there, spreading the ball around, a lot of different guys. Against GI Northwest, 13 we talked about. Scottsbluff, the 3 against Scott, and Gross, the 2 is a 40. What was that? A 42-0 win over Elkhorn Mount Michael, and a 21-7 win for York against Seward.
All chalk in C1, as you mentioned earlier. So I mean, not a ton, I think, in terms of movers and shakers in B, but still the collision course for Pierce potentially and maybe Aurora in B, although a couple of teams, McCook just kind of hanging around down there as a 3 in C1.
Yeah. Again, basically all chalk there, except for Lincoln Christian, the 9. And